Hello and welcome. I'm excited to introduce you to this episode of Viewpoint on the Ask Krishna channel. Today, I'm truly privileged to have a dialogue with Dr. R. Balasubramaniam, affectionately called as Dr. Balu. Dr. Balu is a physician, a development activist, and a public policy advocate. He is a former visiting professor at Cornell University. He serves as a member HR for the Capacity Building Commission, Government of India. He is also the chairperson of the Social Stock Exchange Advisory Committee of the Securities and Exchange Board of India, also called as SEBI. He tirelessly works with the rural and tribal population in India to uplift them, establishing hospitals, schools, and offering service. In between, he has found the time to author 7 powerful books on spirituality and leadership based on his excellent knowledge of Gita and Upanishads. This interactive dialogue with Dr. Balu is meant to be a straight talk from the heart. We will discuss life's common challenges, our relationship with a God or a divine, and go over the teachings of Swami Vivekananda, the Vedanta, the Gita, and the Upanishads. We will also have a Q&A at the end from a close-knit audience. And through this video, you will have access to the entire dialogue and the Q&A. Without further delay, please join me on this dialogue with Dr. Balu. One last thing, don't forget to subscribe to the Ask Krishna channel and support us. To have many more of these spiritually rich videos that allow you to live a life of faith, free from fear, and live a life of common sense and rationality. Let's now talk to Dr. Balu. Very good, sir. Thank you so much for coming over here.
Thank you for having me.
And it's a privilege to be talking to you. We are blessed and honored that you made the trip here to have this next 1 hour with us. So I know we are going to talk about leadership principles, particularly based on Upanishads and the Gita, which is, by the way, Krishna's grace, that's been my area of focus. That's where I like to spend my entire life, and I continue to be a seeker in that journey. I know I cannot complete that in this life, but let's see where that goes. Yeah. But that's where the focus has been. But before we get there, and given the wide applicability of this discussion, I want to not start with leadership. I want to take you back. So, I remember you saying in one of your discussions or writings that your mom enrolled you in Bal Vihar. And like any other naughty child, you never wanted to go there. Probably you were not expecting this question, but
I know.
but let us,
a great beginning.
Let us start there. Tell me a bit more about how did that influence you at that young age?
I should confess that it didn't influence me at that young age. Possibly the influence is something you don't perceive till it starts manifesting. So at that age, it was a nuisance. It was a disturbance. Like, Saturday evening is when you want to play cricket undisturbed. There's a large playground near my house, and the first ones to occupy the main pitch gets the pitch. So the struggle was to be there on time, and then exactly around the same time, your mom wants you to be in Chinmaya Mission's Bala Vihar. And if you are the youngest sibling, with 2 older siblings who are very diligent and conscious of what the mother says and it has to be followed, you have a problem on your hands. So, best of my advantage, I would try to negotiate my absence. But then finally you reconcile to the fact that your brother and sister would be the biggest carry home tattle, whatever you call them, tale teller at home, and so it's a problem facing your mother after that. So you end up going to this Bala Vihars and you're forced to do the chanting, the Bhagavad Gita chanting, the where the Chinmaya mission operates, is you do the My Prayers. There's a book called My Prayers. There's a meaning explained. And more importantly, there's a lovely prasad at the end. So then you can't have cricket, at least you fall in love with the prasad. That's exactly my attitude was. But what you don't realize is prasad is the physical manifestation of something which had already happened. And in one place, Vivekananda himself describes it. When he talks about himself, he says, once I inspired you, I get into your thoughts, and then there is no way you can let me out through any pore of your body. And I'm just inside resonating all the time. Now it makes sense. When I read it, I said, what nonsense is this? But I think the influence of Balavihar is 3-4 things I would interpret it now. One is actual content, and you start, it skips, like, even now Saraswati Namastubhyam is part of my life, and you don't know why, but you didn't believe in it when it was taught to you, but every exam it comes up. It's so subconscious. So there's a subconscious influence, interpretations come later. The second thing is there's a satsang exposure. Everybody in that room is vibrating with the same kind of thoughts and thinking, at least that for that hour or two. And third, there is a pride that you start taking subconsciously on what this means to you, what actually does it, how does it touch your life. And later on in life you realize what kept you safe. It's a kavach, and that kavach is wrapped around you without your knowledge. And so therefore, even if you resist the time spent, you can't resist the kavach because you don't see it even. And for me, it's been a great protection all my life.
Wonderful. And you talk about your mother. Was she the greatest influence on your life?
She was an extraordinary influence, because being a homemaker and being somebody who was very conscious of our responsibilities at home, I think I would say all my values got shaped by her. The values of respecting everybody else, the values of integrity, and I have possibly spoken this somewhere, I don't know, but it's not been much on the public domain. I still remember when I was a young child in school, the lunch break, you have all these vendors outside in India, the sugarcane seller, the guava seller, and all this, the kulfi seller. And you hardly, coming from a very typical ordinary middle class family, pocket money was not even a word you heard of, forget even seeing the money. And my mother would generally not be very, demonstrably giving in that sense, because it was a real hand-to-mouth existence in that sense, because all of us grew up like that. I think most of us would have grown up like that. And one day during lunch break, I saw very luscious guavas, and it was so crowded around the vendor. The poor vendor didn't notice my taking away two. And I proudly put it in my bag, brought it home, and I thought my mother will say, what a skillful son I have. I just showed it to her and said, I got 2 guavas today. And knowing fully well that she hadn't given me any money, she could immediately say, and she was very disappointed. And that one look on her face took away all the joy I thought I had got 2 guavas in my hand. And she looked at me and said, I never really thought I would have a son like you, but I'm not going to punish you. The only punishment I'm going to give is go back to the guava seller, apologize for what you did, give it back and come. Now stealing is easy. Accepting you stole and giving it back and asking for pardon is possibly the greatest lesson I can ever forget. Now one way of looking at it is you can say it scarred a child, but the way I looked at it is it built my character. I went back to him, I had to make sure all my friends had left, my classmates had gone, the school bell rang, the vendor was empty. But there is an embarrassment in confessing also. And in Hinduism we don't really talk of confession, it's a personal conversation you have with God, and at that time it was, my God was my mother in that sense. So I went to the guava seller and said, he asked me, what do you want? The bell has rung. I said, no, I have come for something else. And I gave it to him and he was shocked. And what he told me has possibly fashioned my life. He said, as long as there are mothers like yours, the world is safe. And so this experience I narrate because values are shaped by the cultural resonance that is happening at the home all the time.
Correct. Yeah.
My father was so honest. He was a government servant and he used to go on audits. And whenever he would go, I once accompanied him, and during the break, he would leave the office, go out, have a cup of tea and come back. Whereas in the audits, if you are an audit officer, the office getting audited would like to make sure that you don't get troubled and you're taken care of. And for me as a high schooler at that time, I was fascinated to see that I would simply be sitting in the hotel room. I just went with him once. And he would come during the break, have coffee and go back. I said, what, want to give you coffee in the office? He said, I've come here to audit them. The moment I take a coffee, then I'm already subscribing to the fact that I must take care of.
You're compromising it. Yeah.
And that sort of set me thinking that, this is what integrity is all about. And I think it adds and shapes you. But from the public space perspective, one thing which again resonates a lot very deeply in me is I used to be very close to the Paramacharya of Kanchi. And I used to regularly go there. And
I was going to get there, but yes, please keep going.
The next question you could build around it. Swami Jayendra Saraswati was a great support and mentor for us. So every time I'd go to the Kanchi Mutt, I would spend just time sitting with the Paramacharya. He would not even talk much, but you could know, you knew he loved you, just sitting there. And one day suddenly he looked up after an hour of sitting there and said very, very, very deep. At that time again you don't understand the depth. He said, a lot of people will offer you a lot of support as you grow in life. People will give you lakhs of rupees. But I would suggest instead of taking 1 lakh from one person, you should start taking 1 rupee from a lakh people. And I thought, oh, what has happened to this old man? He doesn't know Vyavahara. How can I go to a lakh people and collect 100 rupee? And the world doesn't operate that way. All these thoughts were going on in my mind. But then what he followed up was something important. He said, you are in the public space. If a man gives you a lakh rupees, only 2 eyes are watching you and holding you accountable. But if a lakh people give you 1 rupee each, 2 lakh people are watching over you, and that will keep you on the path. So he said, hold yourself accountable to a larger number of people, because even if you slip through one man's eyes, somebody else will spot you. And I think our religion, our culture, our environment is so full of such thoughts, and they all come, and you should just accept them.
Excellent, excellent. So here, as you're lovingly called Balu, from this kid who steals Goa but then apologizes, right? You get to age of 19 and you say, let me start SVYM, Vivekananda Youth Movement. What drove the transformation to say, because at the age of 19, particularly now, I'm sure we are talking several decades ago, this accessibility wasn't there, but the thought for you to start that, what was the drive for that?
I was a typical Bangalore-based middle-class kid, 2 older siblings already in North America. So my aspirations are simple. And coming from a typical middle-class environment, you either do medicine or engineering. There's nothing in between. We never even thought there's anything in between. That's the exposure we had, and you always are recommended to take PCMB. Because you don't get medicine, you take engineering. I didn't want medicine. I was so far away from medicine, I thought it's not for me. But that's a time when computers had just come in, and the world of IT was there. I think everybody was talking about it, and I as a student, I used to love science. And there's a National College was a very popular college, which I didn't study in, but I studied in MES College. But during summer holidays, a great physicist, Dr. H. Narasimhaiah, was a very popular, very well-known educationist Gandhian. He used to run something called the Bangalore Science Forum. And one day he took us all to Indians of Science, huge room full of computers, boxes, big boxes, and now possibly those computers are less powerful than what we have on our phone. But he told us this is the world of computers, and the way he explained it, we fell in love with this IT world without knowing what it was. But that's an aspiration. That's what he wanted to do, create aspirations for young children in science. So I was wrestling with, I have to become a computer scientist, and I had to study in IIT. And obviously you aspire for IIT, but IIT may not aspire to take you in. There's a process. So I didn't get in. Much later, when I was a visiting professor at IIT Delhi, I would tell my students, now you have no choice. Your IIT reject is teaching you. But I thought then REC, Suratkal, that was the next, they were called RECs those days, now they call them NITs.
Correct. Yeah.
I had 99.67% in my PCM, so I thought I'll walk into the school. But there's only one seat for general merit, and my classmate with 100% got it. So I was so disappointed. Even I was waitlisted 1. And I knew my classmate is not going to drop out, so I would never get that seat. Very disappointed, just came to Bangalore, chose what, I just took something. I got the BMS Engineering College, I took mechanical. My brother was already an engineer. He said, take mechanical because it's a foundational science. Then you can jump to IT and all that. It's just coming in. So nobody knew the power of IT those days. I went there. First day I was very badly ragged. To me, till then, Vivekananda was just a photograph in the college wall of MES college, the Hindu monk of India. That's all. And I neither understood Hindu nor monk nor India at that time, to be honest. It was just a photograph you watched. But after the first day of ragging was so bad, I never had the courage to go back to college. And there were no anti-ragging acts those days. I'm talking 1987. I was 17 at that time. 1982, sorry. And then what do? And homemaker mother who's very intelligent should know that you can't just go home and lie to her. You don't have money to go to a movie. You don't have courage to come back home. So on the way to the Basangudi, the BMS college is the Basangudi Ramakrishna Ashram. So the gates are open. I just thought, let me go sit for some time here. No, you don't have to spend money. It is green and beautiful. So few days I did that. I think the brahmacharis and monks there must have felt this is a vagabond sitting here all the time. He must have come to steal some lovely fruit orchard they have. To just prove to be a very diligent youngster who's in search of something higher, I went and sat in the library. The intent was nothing more, just to say that I'm not a thief. But then those days Swami Vivekananda's works were in 8 volumes. Now it's 9. So I started reading them, and I can't say I understood much, but I read completely in the next 2 months. But in the meanwhile, they noticed me sitting there every day. They would close at 12, so you would get out. They started inviting me for lunch, and then you become part of the system there after some time. You sleep on the bench till they would open in the evening again, then cycle back home, tell my parents, my mother that half-day college. 2 months passed away. But in those 2 months, I pretty much read everything that Swamiji's works was all about. But 2 small books, which possibly has left its deepest impression on me. One was his call to the nation, and the other was to the youth of India. Where sentences like, I call every young man a traitor who having been educated at people's expense pays not the least heed to them. Or sentences like, I do not believe in a God or religion which cannot wipe away the widow's tears or bring a piece of bread to the orphan's mouth. I said, this is the God I want, and this is the religion I would like to know. And I believe at 17 every young man is a undeclared socialist. You think that the way of the magic wand, the world will become egalitarian, everything will be leveled out. It doesn't work that way. Age tells you later. But I was inspired by this Swamiji's message, and I said, I am not going to be a traitor to my country. My life is going to be about doing something different. I remember it so vividly, September 29th or 30th in 82, and I come home, there's a telegram saying, join Mysore Medical College immediately. I had a much lower percentage, around 92 and odd in PCB, and so I thought this is a divine sign. So I personally never aspired to be a doctor, but I saw this as a call of God and joined medicine in 82. Within a year and a half, like Vivekananda himself says, he enters you, he doesn't leave you. So the restlessness kept mounting, and in 1984, 40 years ago now, I said I have to do it. And so it had to be a movement, it had to go beyond me, it had to be inspired by Swamiji's message of a resurgence for India in every sense of the word, not just in economic sense or social sense, but in every sense, in a cultural sense, in a religious sense, in a spiritual sense. So I thought building a resurgent India became my call. I took it that way.
And you started SVYM. Yes. How do you, and I truly find to what you said, Vivekananda being one of those individuals who really, if you want to be a true spiritualist, you have to understand Vivekananda. Anybody who does not understand that, I feel, will struggle. So, but how do you then reconcile the concept of a divine or a God knowing Vivekananda? Because Vivekananda's definition of a divine or a God is very different than what you would come across in a Puranic structure.
I think Swamiji also explains in different levels that you always evolve from one level of truth to the next level of truth. And at one level of truth, it's easier to see God in an idol. It's easier to see God in a temple. It's easier to see God in a photograph. I used to. One poignant scene as a child still stays in my mind. I was walking, and in Bangalore, those days, street corners, you had this cement round little things which they would throw garbage in. somebody had possibly thrown a photograph of a photograph of God. Maybe they were worshipping it. It was lying beside the garbage bin. And I actually saw a rat picker walking by. He saw that in the garbage, picked it up, and I was walking alongside him. He took it to a place where it was reasonably cleaner, kept it there, went to somebody, climbed on somebody's compound wall, picked a flower, and put it back. So that immediately stayed in my mind. Now it's easy to dismiss this rat picker as somebody who just picked up something, but I don't think there must have been hundreds of people who walked by it. But the rat picker was such an advanced level of thinking, in my opinion, that what others saw as a photograph lying by the garbage bin, which is what I also saw it as, he saw the divine in it. Now, was the divinity there in the photograph, or was the divinity in the beggar or the rat picker?
If you follow Vivekananda, you know the answer.
Yeah, right?
Exactly.
And so I think by that time I had started reading Vivekananda. So it suddenly made sense to me that he has evolved from one level of truth. For my level of truth, it is garbage. His level of truth is divinity that you can see. So when Ramakrishna Paramahamsa gave this beautiful sloka, I think that's the greatest of all religions. He says, Shivajnane Jiva Seva. Right? And it's so powerful. So the jnana has to come from inside and use different tools.
Correct.
And that reconciled to me external to the internal.
External to the internal. So you continue this journey, and I really was very much caught by this statement when you met Swami Achalanandaji about what is an ideal teacher, what is an ideal student. That statement really was it's a profound statement that you went in search for that and you actually asked him that question.
And he was sitting in front of you.
He was sitting in front of you. So tell us what was there in your mind when, if you still remember, when you asked that question, and then why did that prompt came in on an ideal student and an ideal teacher?
You see, again, like I said, you must also put things in perspective. When I met Swami Achalanandaji, I was 1985. I was 20 years old. He was he was a grihastha who took up sannyasa. He was a chief engineer of Madras Presidency those days. When IIT Madras was constructed, he was the one supervising it. And a man of extraordinary integrity. Like, one of his they used to call them overseers those days, the monitors of he took a 1 rupee bribe. And Swami Achalanandaji, as the chief engineer of the presidency, resigned. He said that if I cannot inspire somebody working under me not to have taken the 1 rupee bribe, then I am not good enough to be the chief engineer. And that's the kind of person he was. And he was deeply inspired by Swami Yatishwaranji of the Ramakrishna order, who was possibly seen as a very great jnani himself. And the Ramakrishna mission doesn't give sannyas to grihasthas, so he couldn't get sannyas from Yatishwaranji, but Yatishwaranji said take it from the Divine Life Society. So he walked around India twice and then took it at Rishikesh sannyas. But the mission kept him. He was popularly known as Shauti Maharaj. Shauti was his surname. In the Vedanta college in Mysore, where young monks, brahmacharis would be guided by him, and possibly in my view, he was one of the greatest Advaitins I have come across. He and Surekshanjay, the privilege of learning from both. And Achalanji was just somebody. In 1985, we were celebrating the first anniversary of the organization in the village where we were working, and the mission monk, Swami Vivekananda, whom I had invited for the event, brought him along. He was nobody else, and I even write about my first meeting with him. He was just a stout monk who came along, a very stern looking guy. He never even spoke to me because as a sannyasi I just went and prostrated to him. Event was over, but something magical happened to me. I felt I got to meet this guy again. You can't explain it. I had met so many monks by then because this hunger was there. Every time I would get an opportunity, I tried to go meet monks. I used to go a lot, without knowing, I used to go a lot to Ramanashram in Tirunelveli. Me and my brother used to regularly visit, but there was no living personality you could relate to. Ramana's presence is there, but not in that sense. But here was a strange, unexplainable feeling in me where I don't know why, but I felt I should see this guy again. So I went back to the Vedanta college and went to meet him, and the first impression of being a stern monk, he seemed to be a jovial, fun-loving guy who made me sit, and what really attracted to him was the extraordinary masala black tea he gave me. I thought, wow, this man can really prepare great tea, and I fell in love with that. But you don't know, you don't even see him as a teacher or a guru, because I never understood what a guru was, and a lot of J. Krishnamurti's influence was in my readings, and he said, you are your own guru and all that.
Yeah.
So mind was confused, you don't really know the path. I started going regularly to him, and what started off as just visits and conversations matured into saying that anyway you're coming, you're spending an hour or so, why not we just discuss some of the scriptures? So whether it's the Gita, the Upanishads, Atma Bodha or Viveka Chudamani, he would just explain to me, and then I would go back and read them. So Viveka Chudamani Shankara says, who is ideal, and how does the ideal guru actually spot the ideal student?
Correct.
You don't really go in search of a guru, the guru finds you. And I couldn't reconcile this. Without recognizing, the guru had actually found me, and I didn't even see him as a guru. But it takes a while to process. That's when I asked him, without knowing that I'm talking to my own guru. And he was not even, the beauty is he never saw himself as a guru. He was just a gentle instrument communicating so many things to me, using personal examples, using examples of other great monks, and guiding me. And he would always say, I never understood it then. He said, I wish I'd seen you 5 years earlier. There would have been so much more I could have given. These words don't mean anything at that moment of time, but with passage of time, he only sits on my table as a photograph today. So, like you asked this question about Swamiji and reconciling, you suddenly realize that a photograph is not a photograph. Anybody coming into my room, hundreds of people come into my office in Delhi, they see the photograph too. For them it's just a monk in some ochre robe sitting there, but for me it's a presence. And it's unexplainable, but there's a presence. And so you think, and I remember he telling me just before he passed away, he actually told me on the day he passed away, he's going to pass away. I didn't see the symptoms. And, but he had also, in the same day he told me, but I'll be there. I couldn't understand what he was talking about. And now I perceive it. That is the Guru Mahima.
And you have stuck with the Ramakrishna order since then?
I won't say stuck, it might be a wrong word, but you evolve, you grow, you learn, you appreciate.
Correct.
But the gospel of Sri Ramakrishna or Vivekananda's works, different things resonate with different people. So for me, just yesterday I was explaining to some people how the Shirdi Sai Baba meant nothing to me. Suddenly it means a lot to me. Now, I think that's a level of truth you keep elevating yourself.
Absolutely.
And in the Ramakrishna order too, Swami Achalanji passed away in 1990.
Yeah.
And then I would call, he was my Diksha Guru. My the real mentoring guide and guru was Swami Sureshanji and the great Advaitin.
And you got introduced to Sureshanandaji from Achalanandaji.
Deliberately, now I can see the
exactly.
reasons.
And you got the answers of that question actually from Sureshanandaji.
Exactly.
Yes.
So you remember, you read
that. Correct. Yeah.
And he said, you go ask him. And so it all started for me getting to know him and meeting him. And he passed away 2019, 5 years ago again. But then they were benchmarks of the Ramakrishna order. And so you always, the mind is still at the level where you compare, you look for, you seek. So you always look for, and today I know quite a few monks across different orders, but I think finally they're just labels. If you seek deep enough, each of them offer you something which is significant, which is useful, and what you pick is your temperament. And that's been a journey, and the journey you always have somebody to hold your hand and take you to the next destination. So that's been the beauty, and you can see them either as separate individuals from different orders, it doesn't really matter, or you can see your own guru hand-holding you through different forms, taking you, and the need is there. So I have had extraordinary opportunities and experiences where highly advanced, elevated monks had given me the grace of holding my hands and taking me across. And Achalanji was one who told me about Paramacharya. So my grandfather, who was a Dikshidhar, who was very close to the Kanchi Mutt, would always be consulted by the Paramacharya for a lot of ritualistic aspects of religion. It didn't really resonate with me. But once my guru told me, you got to go there, and then I started going repeatedly there. He would never even speak much. but in not speaking he spoke. And so that phase of my life I needed something like that, because it was not about questions that somebody else could give me, answers that somebody else could give me, but somebody would enable me to ask the right questions within myself, and that silence provided that.
I think you found the true guru then, because when the guru, it's not about the guru preaching as you say, it's guru allowing you to reflect on your own, and you come up with the questions and in many cases the answers as well. Now, what is Advaita's definition in your words?
It's a very difficult question you have asked me. I don't even think I'm qualified to answer it, but I'm going to try.
Please.
The way
That's why I said in your words.
Yeah, the way I explain to myself. I think it's a way I had drawn this explanation from Swami Vivekananda's works, and what he gave as the Vedic message to the Ramakrishna order as their mission statement, Atmano Mokshartam Jagathitayacha. You could interpret it as the personal evolution, the inner evolution through the external manifestation of service. So you do service with the intent of evolution, or you can refine it further and say it's not just an instrument to evolve, your evolution starts manifesting as service to others. Then you will go one step further and say that it's not about the you within or the without, it's an opportunity to experience the oneness that is neither the within nor the without. There is no the service nor the server nor the served, and you experience it all as oneness. This journey of discovery of that oneness is what I would call sadhana, or sadhana in the pursuit of understanding Advaita. To me, virtually everything that system has conspired for me to participate in has given me this opportunities to experience it. It's also given me opportunities to see the dual, to see the separateness, and therefore suffer the separateness. And that's a wake-up call, that's a reminder. So you have this like a step well, you climb one step at a time. You can see the water, but you still not touched it. So you believe the water is there, you can see it, but you have not experienced the water. But you take one step. Though it looks like you're descending, you're actually ascending to reach that stage. And to me, that journey of knowing that Amrit is there, you are not discarding the reality of the Amrit, but at the same time, you are not able to separate yourself from the experience of Maya, or the illusory world that you are in. Because it reminds you that it is illusory only after the experience. Right? During the experience, it's so real that you get sucked into it. But the life I have led has always enabled me to appreciate, because I can never explain everything that's happened to me except in that space of that oneness. So it's, right now I would say it's intellectualization, but intellectualization gives me the courage and the faith and the strength to believe that the experience will come soon.
I'll just share one snippet with you. To me, one of Shankara's greatest teaching, and personally which it has helped me, is understanding Advaita helps you to become non-judgmental. So back to when you said in the Ramakrishna order, when you went, they thought you were just there toiling around trying to grab a fruit or something, and you went to the library. Once you're core into it, then you realize this whole judgmental aspect of judging another person right away goes away. And that to me is what the real value comes through in our daily life, because there is of course the Paramarthika, but in the Vyavaharika that really helps us in that regard. No, thank you for sharing that definition. So let's then proceed now. Now I'll come to leadership. So do you mind holding on? Few minutes, sorry. So you go through this and now you say, okay, there's enough that I have gleaned, or you're still on a journey, but you have gleaned, that now you say, let me start looking at leadership. So which Upanishads primarily influenced you around leadership? I know you quote Kathopanishad and Brihadaranyaka quite a bit, but which is that why you chose because you mastered in that, or is there a reason why you chose out of the 14?
No, I would put it the other way around. If you actually look at the Gita, and if you see it as possible, the distilled out, Vivekananda says it so beautifully. He says, none of us can really appreciate and understand the enormity or the depth or the width of the Upanishads. Even if you were to just say 108, there might be much more, but it's not possible. Actually, like you said, one Janma may not be enough for us, even intellectually understand.
Correct. Yeah.
But Vivekananda says the easiest shortcut is the Bhagavad Gita. Or like in Vishnu Sahasranama, you just understand Sri Rama Rameti, and then you have the blessings of having recited the entire Vishnu Sahasranama. So there's always a shortcut given for us to negotiate in our scriptures. So I would look at the Gita was the starting point for me. And for a long time I read Swami Tapovanji's commentaries. I used to listen to a lot of Swami Chinmayanji's, Swami Sarvapriyanji's comments. All of them have their own unique and beautiful ways of explaining. But what really inspired me to go deep into the Gita was it was one treatise where the Bhashyas of Ramanuja in one particular perspective, Madhvacharya ji in his perspective, and Adi Shankara in his own perspective somehow didn't seem different to me. Though apparently we can separate it out and say Dvaita, Vishishtadvaita or Advaita, I could see the uniqueness of their commentary finally leading us the same place. I thought, what kind of a document can this be?
Exactly.
Interpretationally, all of us interpret things differently. Like as a physician, I write a particular prescription because I interpret a disease in a particular person, and you are, as another physician looking at the same patient with the same data, you possibly interpret it slightly differently and prescribe it differently. Whereas this is a treatise which is so complex or so simple, and either way you can look at it, that people are nearly converging on the interpretation, though they are supposed to be from different philosophical schools of thought. So I fell in love with that convergence, and I started going deeper and trying to see, okay, how would Ramanuja see this, or how? Then I realized, what does it even matter? How am I seeing it? How is this going to be an instrument of change in the world I am operating in? Assuming it's all Maya, but still it's a world out there. People are sick. I was living in the poorest of the poor at that time with the tribals in the forest. People they are worried about their next meal, they are worried about a house to live in, they are worried about their children, and as much as I am worried about them. So that seems more real, and the Bhagavad Gita makes existence so real. There is a Kurukshetra happening. There is Arjuna with all his complexities and his enormous courage and valor and capabilities is going through Vishada. And to me, suddenly it looked like there is no Bhagavad Gita if there is no Arjuna. Everybody talks about Krishna as giving us the Gita, but if there was no Arjuna with all his Vishada there, who is the mentor to explain it to him? And the first chapter itself was an extraordinary leadership chapter for me, because everybody, at least I was interpreting from what I was reading, as the real stuff is coming from the second chapter onwards. But here I felt that first chapter lays the foundation, where the vulnerability of human beings can be understood, and the confidence and faith and conviction that you will always have a hand that will hold on to you, and the power of the role and the dharma of roles, which is what leadership is all about. Leadership is always in context, in the context of a battlefield called life every day, where we play different roles. Here was a charioteer to safely ensure that Arjuna goes through the war, but suddenly the mentor, the collaborator, the explainer, the teacher, so he could play so many roles. So differentiating roles is a very important aspect of leadership. So I started processing leadership understanding. I realized this one chapter was giving me enough material about leadership itself, about the vulnerability of existence, about having self-doubt, about being confused. And today the world of leadership literature celebrates mentorship. Now, you can't get a more powerful expression of mentorship from chapter 1 than from chapter 1. So I realized that it's so beautiful, and then it takes you from a level of what Vivekananda said, from a level of half truth to the next level of truth and to the next level of truth. This chapter actually handholds you. So if you were willing to be vulnerable enough like Arjuna and seek the deep Krishna, maybe both are inside you, and that's a struggle I was going through, and I thought this is such a powerful do-it-yourself kit. Why am I not seeing it this way? It's because I was processing it constantly as a guide to living from a spiritual perspective. Then suddenly struck me, there is neither external nor internal. So spirituality can be described as leadership in action, as much as leadership can be seen as a demonstration of spirituality itself. Instead of separating the two, I thought, why this dichotomy? So can I live a life where my spiritual manifestations are an extraordinary reflection of the leadership that's emanating from me, or I learn the spiritual messages from all these textbooks and see if my leadership can be fashioned in that way. So that's how I started getting into it. So, and then I would go back and cross-reference and verify which are the Upanishads which are saying it, because the Gita is a distillation of all these Upanishads.
Correct.
Obviously it came from somewhere, and so let me, and whatever my limited understanding, because I am not a Sanskrit student, and therefore I had to depend on transliterations, translations and explanations of others. I am struggling to learn Sanskrit and to form my own interpretations, but that's a journey. But I realized that my starting document was the Bhagavad Gita, and everything else comes from that.
Yeah, you said without Arjuna there is no Gita. In fact, as personal reflection, I was saying without Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra there is no Gita.
Perfect.
And that Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra are within us as well, in addition to Arjuna being there. Question is, do you become an Arjuna? Because Duryodhana, Dhritarashtra are default. Do you become an Arjuna?
That is one level of truth to the next level.
Exactly, in that regard. I know folks may have questions. If you wouldn't mind, please make a note of it. Towards the end, we'll make sure all the questions get addressed. So, what aspects of, so then you took this framework of the Gita, but then you went a bit deeper, I noticed, and you looked at this dichotomy of spirituality, service, and science. And you said the integration of that is what makes a true leader. How do you reconcile science and Gita? But why this concept of introducing science into that too, which is not normally done? When you talk spirituality, they normally include service.
That's because people don't see spirituality itself as a great science. See, the way we look at science is mostly the physical sciences, and what we can feel, interpret, and demonstrate in a laboratory. But what greater laboratory than life, where spiritual experiences can so easily be replicated if you practice it. Now look at the codification Patanjali has given us. You don't jump to samadhi. You have to have the yama and niyama as a foundation. So it suddenly I looked at it and said, what greater science than that? The science of the inner self. And there is whether it is you starting your journey, we are also very short in our metric. We measure life and its accomplishments by the one janma that we are going through. But what we may not have seen is we have evolved over time. Possibly we are at the fourth stage. Maybe I have reached a level of dharana, and then I only have to do dhyana and then go to samadhi. So it looks as though I had a shortcut, but it's not. So the journey is real for all of us. And if you start, and if you actually understand it, if you don't exercise and yama and niyama are such basic human concepts.
Yeah.
But even science, you need integrity. Even in science, you should say, I will not plagiarize your paper in academic work. I won't covet for that. I will do what I have to do ethically. So in a sense, there is no distinction. But because the human mind can't wrap around an experiential immersion like spirituality, they don't see it as science. But a great scientist like Einstein could see it. Today, quantum physics is getting us closer and closer to the same experience.
It is.
Yes. Or in the world of neurobiology, Professor Ramachandran's work in San Diego, he's also trying to look at this Advaitic experience and saying whether it is there. So I think more and more today, better imaging techniques and technologies available, at least they're getting closer. It'll take, maybe they'll never get close enough. So I think I don't see a distinction. That's the point I'm trying to make. Because I see service as an instrument, and the way service can be studied. And if you really understand seva, service is an inadequate translation of seva. And you spoke about this, not judging, and I'd add one more, non-judgmental, non-transactional. In seva, and it's so beautiful. It suddenly hit me because from a very powerful statement of Swami Vivekananda. He says, don't stand on a pedestal and say, here my poor man, take my 5 cents. Consider yourself privileged that you have the opportunity to serve the other. But even there is you and the other. So I was processing it and saying, even there's a hierarchy. Though he says don't stand on a pedestal, what did he mean? I was struggling with understanding Vivekananda at that time. But in another place he says there are 3 levels of service. And he gives it so beautifully. He says first is Dahika Seva, take care of the body. And as a physician it was very easy for me to internalize. So I started hospitals. But then he says as you evolve, the restlessness will come in. You will not feel happy that this is enough. Then you start the Bhautik Seva. And I thought, okay, building schools is Bhautik Seva. So I also went through it, and then he says, but then the real expression of seva is adhyatmic seva. And to me, the separation meant that I have to do adhyatmic seva for others, and I said I am not adequate, I am not there. Maybe the Ramakrishna orders and others can do it, but I will not do it. But it took me a longer while to interpret this as maybe Vivekananda never meant of doing it for others. He said you do daihika and bhautik seva to others in a non-transactional, not judgmental way, without any swartha there, without seeing the other, and you start merging yourself into the seva, being neither the server or the served, like I said. That is the adhyatmic seva you do to yourself. And so it suddenly struck me that my interpretation of all this was falling in, like the levels of truth were changing on its own. So to me, that expression is not really separate. But 40 years ago, if you had asked me, building the hospital was important, because without that experience of doing something outside of myself, I wouldn't have possibly. A long answer, but
no, perfectly fine. So, and you took this further. Before I go to that next one, just how do you, for a leader, it's much easier if the group the leader is working with has this level of knowledge, can understand science, service and seva, then it's a little bit easier for the leader. But whether it's an organization or a nation, the masses don't spend time on this. How have you reconciled with that, where the leader can still be effective when that ability to go deeper in this doesn't exist? In all, I mean, in many or in some it may exist, but not in all.
The essence of the way I interpret leadership is not about being a leader at all. It's about exercise of leadership. And that's a significant difference the way the Western appreciation of leadership and the, actually I would say definitely the Indian, I wouldn't generalize it as Eastern, but the Indian appreciation of leadership. The West celebrates a person. I have to take all of you forward. I am at the forefront of everything, and so I have the knowledge, come follow me. But look at the Gita. Look at whether it's Vivekananda in his works or Krishna in the Gita. He just offers you a journey and a methodology to accomplish the journey. He's just giving you a chance to say there's a bus out there, there's a destination which is better, you can take the bus journey, but the choice of getting onto the bus and buying a ticket, he gives it to you.
Is yours,
right?
Correct.
And so that's a beauty of the Krishna's thinking. He said you can, for all you know, you may not believe in this, throw it out of the window. But it's for you to experience the beauty of that knowledge. Vivekananda says the same thing. He says, I have discovered the truth, I am offering it to you. It may not be your truth. You can throw it out of the window if you find no use for it. But he says, test it out for yourself. Tell yourself it's even worthy enough of taking it further. And then it's your truth. To me, being a leader is exactly that. You're constantly struggling to evolve, and you're also inviting others to join the journey. You're inspiring them to join the journey. You're not insisting on that they join the journey. The West looks at relevance and identity coming from only when I have followers. But the East looks at the journey and why am I doing the journey. If it's a process of self-discovery and here is an opportunity for you to choose and saying that this one vision or mission I have got, and if you believe in it, this could be one methodology. If you don't believe in it, you can take your own path. So as many people, so many paths. And that's the beauty of thinking of the Indian scriptural base. So to me, that if you don't understand this fundamental difference, there will always be a conflict. The West went deeper and deeper and deeper in an expression of myself as superior to you, and that's why I am the leader in front.
And the traits associated with that.
And so therefore they kept on building it, saying that, so they actually concretized the expression of aham. Because it's my trait, I am honest, I am got integrity, I am the CEO of the company. So my identity comes from that. So the identity was very driven by the role I was playing, whereas the Indic thinking, identity was by my identity of the self. And that's very powerfully different. It was not the role. And here it was all about, not about expressing my aham in that manifested way, but subsuming my aham by melting and dissolving myself into the expression of service of the other. And that is the way you can inspire people. So to inspire somebody else, it's not by saying, come, I have the path and follow me. That's a cult. But saying that, this is the way you can discover yourself. This is what I've been trying. Would you want to try it out along with me? And the beauty is that's why a guru is never demands compliance. He compassionately facilitates your growth. And it is our inability to differentiate that we today everybody expects a prescription. I find it strange that so-called gurus and godmen will tell you, and the beauty of Indian scriptures, it is never dogmatic. And today we are dogmatizing it and saying, you join my order, you have to follow A, B, C, D, E. No, it's not that at all. And it's a facilitative, gentle I won't even call it persuasion, gentle facilitation of you to express yourself, to discover what the guru also discovered. And therefore there is no hierarchy, but there's with you. A guru is never over you, a guru is always with you.
One thing, and maybe it would help for the viewers and this audience to share, you took all of this, and what I really like is you translated it into two terms, human capital and social capital. When I dug deeper into it, to me that identifies with Adhyatmika that you define and Satsang that we discussed at the beginning. But for the interest, if you could just share what human capital and social capital is.
See, again, my appreciation of this came from two things. Civilizationally looking at India's growth and how the evolution of society from its conceptual thinking to the expression of the society outside, which invasions and cultural appropriations by the other countries around us diluted it. So India always celebrated the fundamental growth in 4 domains. They were concerned about the human body, because body is a temple, an instrument through which you have an opportunity to discover your true inner self, and therefore you take care of the body. Now for me it was an experiential process, because I was so engrossed in my work, and Vivekananda says it, and for me everything was inspired by his thinking. He says work, work, work till you fall dead from sheer exhaustion. So that was my great inspiration. So I would work 16-18 hours a day without recognizing the Bhagavad Gita talks about moderation and everything. So possibly if you reconcile this, it meant that work till the body suffers, that is, but give you 100% of the work. At that moment of time, your completeness to that instant, the power of now. It took me a while to appreciate it, but now I have learned it. But those days it was different. I thought, oh, he meant that give yourself completely to it and wear your body out. But so the physical aspect matters, and that's why yoga in its own way, I am talking about the Ashtanga yoga and the asanas, and it's also very important. And taking care of the body, what you eat, how you live, the shaucha and all, and Patanjali Yoga Sutra is also about taking care of the body. So asana is as important as pranayama, is as important as the food you eat, and the way you take ahara tattva matters. That's why Ayurveda talks of ahara tattva. And I could never understand, I used to think of my grandfather, I was explaining yesterday to Arun, how my grandfather lived this life. He would get up at 3 in the morning, go to the little pond, have a bath, eat once, at the most twice a day. And he would always make sure that either he would cook or my grandmother would cook or my mother would cook for him. And so I never understood the significance. We dismiss it off as muddy and all these things. But the beauty of food is the person preparing the food also influences the food. And today the Swiggies and Zomatos of the world are democratize it in such a way that we don't understand what we are losing, right? I don't blame anybody. That's evolution. We have to be conscious. It's not practical also in today's Vyavaharic existence. So body matters. That's what I'm pointing. And leadership is it's a convergence of heart, body, mind, and soul. So I found this is what spirituality is all about. The mind is such an important organ, and the entire Yoga Sutras is about how do you really dive deep, make your mind more and more sharp, incisively keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. And Ramana's just question looks only, who am I? But that's a journey of the mind itself. So I thought, and how do you take care of this mind? What are the practices you do? Again, the Yoga Sutras describes it, and that's what the whole pursuit of concentration or meditation is all about. And finally, without karuna or compassion, and that's why I write about it in my book, you can't really express it as seva. No, until I have to feel the separateness and say you are suffering, and then understand in the process of taking care of your suffering, I become one with you, with the suffering and the suffered and solution I give you. So you need that heart. And Swamiji says again, Vivekananda says, heart to feel, the head to think, and the hands to work. So you need bhava, the bhakti, you need jnana, and you need karma. And the unification of all this is what he says is really taking care of your soul. So heart, body and mind and soul, the West interprets in a loose way as leadership. For me, there's a deep spiritual significance, and how do you use each of this for constantly. That's why I don't see a separation between spirituality and leadership.
Excellent, excellent. I know we have a few minutes left. I want to make sure folks have time for question and answers. I'll just, if you could, just in a minute, is this what you refer to as leading with the soul when you talk about this aspect?
See, though it looks separate, but I thought people need to distinguish that the real dharma for existence is coming from a much deeper space. That's a power within I talk about.
Got it.
And people have to recognize that. Otherwise, we see leadership dharma as expression from the power without, from the roles I play. Now, that's just an expression, a manifestation. But the real, the gentleness, the compassion, the inner values, all the values described in the chapter 16 of the Gita, can we easily dismiss of as traits of a leader are actually expressions that's coming from the power within, from the Indriya Nigraha, and that's subsuming that aham. And these are very powerful expressions. And it's not about learning, you have workshops and leadership books for dummies where you're told how to be honest and how to be that. I think it's a waste of time. If you can just teach your people how to be what you are from that, awakening that inner dynamo, those things will get manifested.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Dr. Balu. We'll open it for questions, but folks can check out all the books of Dr. Balu, amazing books spanning from self-reflection on I the citizen to leadership as well, right? So in all regards, and then Vivekananda's learnings in his own words, so please check that out. But before we close, let's open it up for some questions.
You can look at drrbalu.com website. So all the links are there.
Yeah. Any questions for Dr. Balu?
Yeah, I had a question. You were saying like the oneness you experienced. My question is like, where is the God comes into the picture? Like the fear of God, your God is different, my God is different, and these rituals and.
Like again, this is all very interpretational, so you should give me the flexibility of interpreting it in my way. I think it's a waste of time. If you're truly on the journey, why bother about what his God is or what her God is? What matters is what God means to me. So we all spend so much time in this discourse of saying, is it Christianity, it's Islam, etc. My religion is my business, my sadhana is my own. You can never benefit from my sadhana. At best, you can benefit from the experiences I am gaining and I can share. So I think the journey is so individualized, it's a waste of time. So why do we even care? Because if you are hungry, you got to eat. You can't eat my food. You'll never feel full. Like you can't say Balu will eat and you'll feel full. It's not going to work that way. So I think I don't even want to waste time. That's what I would tell my friends who would ask me. I'd say, what does it even matter? Why are you spending more time on worrying about whether the trunk of Ganesha is bent to the left or to the right? What does it even matter, right? Can you see the divinity in the Ganesha is all matter, whether his tusk is broken or it's not broken. So we spend so much of time whether the Nama should be on the elephant 3 or 1 and then go to court. I think in my opinion, does it even matter? So maybe these are all the things to show us what really matters. And if you can't even see the divinity in that, I was sitting in the temple inside. It was so powerful. But you might go and just see, do a namaskar and come back, and you might find the power somewhere else. That doesn't mean take away the divinity here, nor does it mean that since I can't see divinity where you see it, I am something inferior. I think it's personalized. That's all I would say.
Yes, one more question there.
I saw some of your work and it is very moving and powerful. The thing is this, that you achieved something that, we need our youth to look up to. With the advent of AI and everything coming up, one thing that is very important in our heritage, in our tradition, in our dharma, is the word seva. And seva brings you back to dharma. how do we bring not just our next generation, but the generation after back to say, well, with the AI act coming up?
So let me just summarize the question because that way it will get recorded. Question is, with all the amazing work you have done and with the learning you have, how can you instill or how can we instill, what is the message about instilling seva in the next generation, particularly where now technology is so prevalent with AI and everything else coming out there?
I think it's a real practical challenge all of us are facing. I would think it's the greatest act of Maya. It looks very dismissive for me, but I'll still explain the way I am thinking through it, because it's a new phenomena for all of us. Me and Arun were talking, and Arun was telling me that he went to ChatGPT and said, "Can you talk about Dr. Balasubramaniam?" And he said it was very nearly perfect. So the tendency is to ask ChatGPT to describe the perfection in me, but that's not spirituality, right? The experience of the perfection within me is what spirituality is all about. And the same ChatGPT 1 year ago, when one of my other friends went and said, he actually called me and said, I tried putting you on Google, then I put on ChatGPT, and it had hallucinated so badly, it had done so many things that I had done. I had not even done, I had not even conceived in my vaguest thing. So if you actually believe that, so to me it's a very powerful way of explaining Maya to me. Right? It is talking stories about which I am not even there, but we keep telling the stories to ourselves. So the way I believe it is, it can never replace spiritual experiences. It can possibly imitate other people's description of their experiences and put it out there and say, this is what you will find, this is what, it will explain Advaita, Dvaita and Vishishtadvaita in somebody else's words. But will it give you the experience? No. Seva possibly is an opportunity to give you, if you interpret Seva so understanding Seva and what spirit of Seva you should take, ChatGPT can explain to you, but putting it in real life is something which only you can do. And to me, again, I wouldn't worry too much about the younger generation, because finally there's a very powerful book by Paramahamsa Yoganandaji. The book is titled Eternal Quest. And all of us have this hunger, this eternal quest. After some time you will find that that's not answering you. You can find any amount of prompt engineering can teach you a lot, but the real prompt engineering is when you start prompting yourself inside and experience it. And how do we get our youngsters to appreciate it? Why youngsters? It's arrogance to even presume that the older generation understood it. Right? Why do you want to bother about the youngsters? So I again come back to just the reality of myself and say, I understood it. Am I able to ask the right questions to myself? Am I able to even discover whether I am on the journey even? We all keep saying, I'm a sadhak, I'm a spiritual aspirant. We all make these nice labels for ourselves. We're actually fooling ourselves because we start believing in the chatter. We really don't know. So giving yourself that vishada, space, the self-doubt and the journey to say, let me just keep walking. And the faith and conviction that by keeping on walking, I'll never be let down, because we also look at ChatGPT can never tell me samarpan. It can never help me understand surrender in a very empowered way. Because the word surrender it will interpret as helpless way. But to me it's such a powerfully loaded thing that you can surrender yourself and experiences with the conviction that the divine will never let you down. And that is the beauty of it. So it's very difficult to tell this, and I would rather have my younger generation just appreciate that intellectualization is not experience, and your experience is never mine. So can we just allow the freedom to walk the path, and maybe at some point of time they might discover how to give you the experience. If once upon a time the hippie culture of the United States thought that drugs and LSD can give you spiritual experiences, it went through that phase, right? They outlived it soon. Today they have a huge problem and of a different kind. So maybe AI also will make us feel it will solve all the problems, but actually end up creating so much for us that we'll start explaining Kalki Yuga better then.
Very good. Yes, Ma.
Baluji, can you speak a little about the book itself? And I've not started reading, but I want to hear something from you. Why this book, and where did you start? Why did you start?
So again, the question is your latest book. Why did you start? Where did you start? Briefly, yeah.
Thank you for asking that. See, the book is a reflection of all the conversations we had in a more evidential way, because the world today is not going to be satisfied with my experience alone, because the mind struggles to reconcile that with your experiences. And we all have this naive belief that universities repackage all the experiences with validated research and present it to students in our courses. I have done that too. Last 15 years of teaching at Cornell, I used to do that, right? That's how you can inspire the younger generation to take a prepackaged set of knowledge. So we are prepackaging knowledge and hoping that application of that knowledge will generate the experience. All of us do that, whether it's a guru of our own or it is in a classroom university structure. But I also discovered something, that in my journey of appreciating leadership from the Western construct and the Eastern construct, the fundamental questions the West could never reconcile in my mind, because I could never understand how, and Archie Brown calls it the myth of a strong leader, and I don't agree with his thinking, but that allowed me to ask myself the question, what is this power that he's talking about, and where does it come from? And suddenly it hit me what Kautilya talks about, Indriya Nigraha and Indriya Vijayi being the public leader that a country or any kingdom needs, the context. So I started going deep and say, oh, this is something that came from Indian thinking. Can I go deeper and look at my own experiences? And the awakening was my tribals lived that. I'm going to give a story. I know this is going to be longer than a minute, so with your permission I'm going to say this. I mentioned about Kempaiah yesterday. The same Kempaiah, I was very disappointed that all the agriculture support I'm trying to give the tribals, the elephants are making it their midday meal, and so everything, they would come and graze everything. So I was very despondent and very low, and one day he had a powerful idea. He said, why are we growing stuff which the elephants already know? So can we grow something the elephants have no idea about? And for tribals, cabbage, and they had a word called foreign vegetables. Everything that they didn't, the typical forest based tubers and greens were their vegetables, everything else was foreign. So we bought cabbage. So we had a bumper crop of cabbage, and one of my colleagues took it to Mysore to sell, and there's a mafia in the markets. So what was 6 rupees a kg in the market, they were offering 30 paise. So we were very disappointed. We just got enough money for the diesel we spent taking the vegetables to the market yard, and came back. I was very low. He came to me and he said, why are you feeling bad? I said, see, I thought I solved the tribal's economic problem. If we grow cabbages, we'll all make money, and we made hardly any money. The elephants could have eaten away the ragi that we were usually growing. He said, oh, that's the problem, he said, your metric is wrong. You are measuring your success from the money that you think my tribals would have made. But he said, you are a city man. Have you ever watched how a seed, 4 seeds can look alike, but after you plant, each of them can be different, right? 4 different species of seeds, everything may look like a mustard seed, but actually what grows out may be mustard in one, something else in the other, if they are different species or genus. Cabbage, he said, how beautifully it comes out, it grows. He says, I see God in action. You enjoyed, he was the one who taught me what doership and enjoyership is. He said, you were so focused on the doing and the enjoying that you lost your track. Because for you, the doing was getting economic gains. But if you had not owned the doership or the enjoyership, you would have possibly experienced the God actions, the real karma of God that's unfolding in front of us. So he was a great exponent of Bhagavad Gita without knowing anything about Bhagavad Gita for me. So these kind of experiences I felt was there in my backyard, and I was going around the world trying to discover it. So I thought, let me understand it deeper. So I started my research I started with simple things, Panchatantra, the way it's beautifully packaged for a child, right? In its own simplistic ways, or for adult also, but we dismiss it off as for children. The Jataka tales. Then I went to Ramayana and Mahabharata, and what do they say? Because they were all in one context, a social context in time. Are they relevant today? Then I went and said, okay, now possibly the essence of all this in the Gita and some of the Upanishads that I could access and read and understand. But okay, I should write about it. But if I write about it in a way which is so uniquely Indian, the world needs this message. It's not about, that's the Vishwaguru Sandesh of India. So the Western world, I am not condescending of any literature or knowledge. I have used a lot of Western models in my book, only to communicate that you had your own methodologies, research frameworks, and Maybe some of them solved the messes we are creating, some of them created the mess that we are living in today. So how do we find a solution which is much more higher, the dharmic way? So my last chapter is the legacy of dharma and the dharma of legacy itself. So where I challenge, it's not about the legacy of one individual, it's about the dharmic way of living, the purushartha expression that we have. And so I thought I should write this, but all of us need a life and blood example. If I talk Bhishma said this or Yudhishthira said this, it's nice, but you will say it doesn't mean anything. And the general social disease, at least in India I can say, is if I can't be a Krishna, I'll put him in a temple, worship him and say God. Right? Whether it is Aurobindo or Ramana Maharishi or Ambedkar or Mahatma Gandhi, I can't replicate them. So best is celebrate a Jayanti and by proxy said I'm doing my job. But can we have a life and blood example of today who is possibly in that journey? Necessarily not perfect, but the journey, and use that to tell everybody we can be. And in politics, from selling tea on a platform to actually negotiating the highest office of land in a noisy democracy like ours, where every day is a challenge to your Sthita Pragnate, but still being that equipoised individual living his dharma, taking care of his heart, body, mind and soul that I described. I suddenly saw an opportunity because of the job that I got 3.5 years in the commission which reports to him, an opportunity to observe and understand and learn and ask and challenge and put it all together and give an exemplar. So the research of my understanding how Indic wisdom can connect to leadership is on 13-14 years old, close to 15 now. And studying his 50 years of public life is 2 years and seeing those elements that are resonating and offering it as a readable exposition is what Power Within is all about. And because it's about him, it's called Power Within, the leadership legacy of Narendra Modi. It's actually the legacy of each one of us and what we want to leave behind. So if we can find that power within, you will make such a powerful difference, because we all want to make a difference to the world. Let's begin to make a difference to our inner world. The outer world will fall in place. That's the attempt of this book. That's why I wrote it.
Excellent. One last question, I think.
I have
yes. Okay. Two last questions. So we'll not ignore the child for sure.
Yeah. He raised his hand before you,
yes.
and therefore
so we allow him first. Go ahead.
Heart, mind and soul. How do we balance this? Karma, jnana, and which we cannot give equal priority to everything. We cannot get anywhere. How should we approach this?
So the question again is, how do you balance heart, mind and soul?
I think I would reframe it and say, let's not waste our time in saying is Bhakti Marga, Jnana Marga. Let's not get complicated. Let's keep it simple. How do I cultivate these three? It will start manifesting in its own way. The guidance will be so powerful, it will take you to what your temperament leads you to. But how do you cultivate it and prepare it, right? So first take care of your body. I look at it as, I usually give a matrix in my workshops and teaching. I say, what you eat, the input, the activity and the output will determine how do you cultivate it. What do you eat for the body? How do you actually exercise the body? It could be simple walking. It could be, I always say, as far as possible, don't eat non-vegetarian food. If people have to eat it, at least eat lean meat. Spot 6 natural colors on your plate. Eat only when you are hungry, and eat till you don't feel full. That is all rubbish, right? Just eat. And it's Vayu Agni. It's sort of different ways in way we describe it. So the Agni inside should not be put out, but just quelled a little bit. That's all you eat for. And this is Ahara Tattva in Ayurveda. It so beautifully explains everything. So take care of the body. Input. Exercise is the way you look at it, and make the body useful for society. So that's the activity that you can do. And sleep at least, if possible, 8 hours. I can't say that because I don't have the moral courage to say it, because I don't sleep 8 hours. But at least sleep till you feel refreshed, because there's a neurobiological process that sleep assures you. Just take care of that. That's easy, right? That's what science also tells us. But the heart, can you love somebody non-transactionally, non-judgmentally? Because today if you say I love you, you want the other person to say I love you too. right? And you want to say 20 times a day. At least the West has made it a habit now. But if you're not even secure in the way you can give love to everybody the same way, then that's not love at all. Love by definition is non-transactional, non-judgmental. It exists, that's all. And so that's a very powerful thing, but how do you practicalize it? So can you do something for somebody else without expecting anything in return, without having to announce it to the world? It sounds simple, but I have, can you just walk quietly to a neighboring slum in the Indian context and teach education to a child which is not necessarily going to reward you with the tuition fees or earn money later on, take care of you if it's your son? No expectations, just doing it because you want to do it, and in that process seek that identity of oneness. Right? That is the exercise of love. It's so powerful. So, and how do you actually keep giving this love every time? The mind is about, the exercise is the meditation, living in satsang, sadvichar all the time, because we all become so negative. Watching television and newspaper is enough, but can we transcend it? And so how do you exercise the mind? How do you make sure you read good things, stay with good people, the constant input is all good? And how do you use it to actually ensure that you are acquiring, it's a lifelong learner? That is a sadhana. Don't worry about the soul. You do these three things properly, the evolution of the soul will start happening and it will start flowering out, and it will take you in a direction which is the most acceptable and amenable to you. But without the preparation of the heart, body and mind, I don't think the others will start. So in a less complicated way, the way I describe it to Indians, just try to practicalize the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. It's exactly in this stepwise fashion. So samadhi doesn't happen immediately, right? So when the dhyana and the samadhi stage is going through, that is the real evolution. But yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, all that is important. And that's so very beautifully hierarchical. You will actually find you practice yama and niyama, you can do an experiment. Sincerely practice for 6 to 8 weeks, the brain starts rewiring. And the meditation that you do after that, or the japa you do after that, the feeling that you experience is so different qualitatively than you keep lying and cheating and doing everything else every day. And then you are also practicing meditation, you will see there is no benefit at all. The best way, proof of the pudding is in the eating. Just do what I said to take care of your heart, body and mind, and don't worry about spirituality at all. The final question.
Final question. We'll close with you. Go ahead.
How can you teach children about exercise and leadership?
Question is, how can you teach children, particularly under 11, about exercising leadership?
I actually teach your parents that. Parents actually don't allow children to be children. God packages and sends you with perfection. We load you with imperfections in life as parents, with our own expectations and our own aspirations for you. So just allowing you to be that reflection of the divinity will allow you to express leadership. So I will teach parents first, to let children be children. And if children are allowed to be children, will be extraordinary leaders.
Very good. Your mom will explain that to you further. Very good. Thank you, Dr. Balu, again. Thank you so much.
Such a pleasure being here.
Krishna, Krishna, Krishna.